Have you ever felt like society's standards were too much for you, or that you couldn't control your worries? You're not the only one if you said yes. A lot of us spend our whole lives worrying about things that may not be as important as we think they are. But what if there was a way to get out of this stuck state? A way to get through life with less stress and more peace of mind? We're going to learn a lot about a philosophical method today that could help you live a better, more fulfilling life. The art of not caring is not about being apathetic or not caring about other people. Instead, it's about putting our care and attention where it matters most, on things we can control, and letting go of the rest. This movie will take you on a trip through the knowledge of different philosophies and philosophers who have been here before us and left us with guideposts. What we're looking at here isn't just academic. It includes the calming philosophy of mindfulness and the energizing philosophy of Stoicism, as well as the existential courage of Søren Kierkegaard and the life-affirming ideas of Nietzsche and the individualistic core of existentialism. We'll also talk about cases and uses from real life. We'll examine how these philosophies have been used by real people and how, in general, not caring in the right way can result in more happiness, less anxiety, and a more complete life. But what do we really mean when we say not caring in a philosophical sense? Lack of care or worry does not mean total detachment. It means freeing ourselves from societal pressures, fears of the unknown, worries about things we can't control, and anxiety about what other people will think of us. Instead of spending mental and emotional energy on things outside of our area of control, the art of not caring requires us to concentrate on our actions, reactions, and attitudes. Understanding our limits and choosing what deserves our attention, hard work, and enthusiasm is what it's all about. It's about learning to be okay with not knowing what will happen and relishing the present moment with joy. You've come to the right place if you've ever felt like the world was weighing on your shoulders, or if you've ever wished you could let go of worries that are holding you back, or if you're just interested in learning about different philosophical views on happiness. We hope that by the end of this trip, you'll have a new understanding of how to handle the ups and downs of life with calmness, peace, and a clear mind. Join us as we show you how to free yourself by learning the art of not caring. Now is the time to go on a mental trip to learn more about yourself and how to let go so that you can live a better, more satisfying life. Before we start this journey, it's important to set the scene by looking into the deep connection between philosophy and happiness. How does philosophy help us define and understand what happiness is? Philosophy is the love of knowledge at its core. It looks at basic questions about life, truth, information, beliefs, reason, and, most importantly for our talk today, happiness. Many philosophers from different times and places have tried to answer the question of what happiness is and how to get it. From old Greek philosophers to modern thinkers, the main goal of philosophy study has always been to find the means of happiness. On the surface, the idea of happiness seems easy and applies to everyone. But when you look closer, you find that it has many aspects and is very personal and complicated. Our perceptions of happiness are typically influenced by our own experiences, our cultural upbringing, and societal norms. But the meaning of happiness grows and changes when we look at it through the big picture of philosophy instead of a particular view. So, how do different intellectual views see happiness? First, let's talk about the Greeks. One of the most important philosophers of all time, Aristotle, thought that happiness was more than just a feeling or a short-lived state of joy. He came up with the idea of eudaimonia, which is often translated as well-being or the good life. Aristotle believed that happiness consisted of living a good and wise life, reaching one's full potential, and making a positive difference in society. It wasn't about seeking pleasure, it was about making your inner life full. Epicurus, on the other hand, thought that happiness meant seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. Epicurean philosophy, on the other hand, doesn't support selfish excess. The easy, natural joys of life, such as company, educational interests, and peace of mind, were important to Epicurus. These philosophers, like Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, were utilitarian. They lived in the 17th and 18th centuries during the Age of Enlightenment. In their moral and ethical standards, they said that happiness is about making as many people as possible happy. Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher who lived in the 1800s, had a less positive view. He thought that life was full of pain and that happiness was just not having to go through pain. Schopenhauer's philosophy says that we should lessen our wants in order to feel less pain and sadness. This changes the way we think about what happiness is. Then there were the existentialists of the 20th century, such as Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. They thought that life has no meaning by itself, and that it's up to each person to find their own happiness and purpose. They embraced sincerity and personal freedom while rejecting societal rules. Also, we can't forget Eastern philosophy practices like Buddhism. Buddhism says that the way to happiness is to let go of desire and attachment, which leads to inner peace and enlightenment. These different psychological views make it clear that happiness isn't an idea that works for everyone. It's very personal and depends on our values, choices, and how we see the world. Whether it's through virtue, pleasure, the lack of pain, personal freedom, or spiritual understanding, different philosophies offer different paths to happiness. We will look at how letting go of some worries fits in with these different philosophical views on happiness as we talk about the art of not caring today. The goal is to find a reasonable and careful way to care about the things that matter to us, which will lead us to a happy and satisfying life. It's important to remember that philosophy doesn't give us solutions. Rather, it helps us ask the right questions. As we learn more about how to not care, let's keep an open mind, question what we think we know, and let these different philosophical ideas help us understand what happiness is. Let us start this interesting trip by learning from the deep insights into happiness that great philosophers have shared. Now let's talk about Stoicism, an old Greek philosophy that has become famous again recently because it has deep knowledge and useful advice for living a good life. Stoicism was started in Athens by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BC. However, it was the lessons of late ancient philosophers like Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius that have stood the test of time and still speak to us today. Stoicism is a moral philosophy that stresses how important it is to be good, use your mind, and be disciplined. Things that happen to us are out of our control, but how we react is. Stoicism gives us the courage to focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't. It's a strong tool for learning how to not care. Now we'll talk about the Stoic idea of the duality of control. Epictetus, a scholar who used to be a slave, wrote beautifully about this idea in his Enchiridion, or Guide. He wrote, "Some things are within our power, and others are not within our power. Our opinion, motivation, desire, aversion, and other things that are of our own doing are not within our power. Our body, our property, reputation, office, and other things that are not of our own doing are not within our power." This stark contrast reminds us to focus our time, energy, and emotions on the things we can control and not care about the rest. This doesn't mean we should be lazy or ignore our tasks. Rather, it means we should figure out what's really important and deserves our attention and care. It means deciding not to be upset by the things we can't control in life. This helps us keep our peace of mind and aligns us with the natural order of the world, which is one of the most important Stoic ideas. Stoicism's example of the skill of not caring can be seen in Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. As Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius had a lot of power and influence, but his works show that he knew that these things are temporary. He wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It's all in your way of thinking." He often stressed the value of inner peace and tranquility over external accomplishments or praise, showing us how to be patient by not caring about things we can't control. In his writings, Seneca and other important Stoic philosophers give more examples of this concept. He wrote that we shouldn't care too much about what's going on in the outside world and shouldn't let bad things or good things get to us too much. In a letter, he said, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without worrying about the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he who is so wants nothing." By following Stoic principles, we learn not to worry about how our lives are changing and instead focus on improving our character, wisdom, and virtue. We learn to be happy with what we have, not caring about what other people do, and at peace with the world. Stoics don't mean that you should not care about anything. They mean that you should know where to focus your care and attention for a happy and peaceful life. We have now moved on from the Stoic school of thought to Epicurus's garden. Epicurus, a Greek philosopher from antiquity who established the Epicureanism school of philosophy, offers a different viewpoint on the art of not caring. Contrary to popular belief, Epicureanism isn't about engaging in physical joys or living a luxurious lifestyle. Rather, it's about understanding the nature of pleasure and desire and living a life of tranquility, freedom, and company. Pleasure, to Epicurus, was the most important thing in life and the greatest good. However, he stressed that not all joys are worth seeking. He said there are two kinds of joys: kinetic pleasures and catastrophic pleasures. Kinetic pleasures come from meeting a wish, while catastrophic pleasures come from being happy and pain-free. The great philosopher Epicurus said that the best kind of life is one in which we can enjoy the simple pleasures of life without being rushed by wants all the time. What Epicureanism says about societal standards and material wants is an important part of the art of not caring. Epicurus promoted a simple lifestyle away from the busy Athens society. His view was that many of our wants, like the need for money, fame, or power, are formed by societal standards and are not natural or necessary. Epicurus said that these wants often cause more harm than good because they are never-ending and keep us wanting more. Epicurus famously said, "If you want to make a man happy, don't add to his riches, take away from his desires." This wise view tells us to ignore the pursuit of material wealth and societal status in favor of cultivating inner tranquility and forming meaningful connections. Epicurus's ideas about fear, especially the fear of death, are also very interesting. He said death doesn't matter to us because death doesn't exist when we don't, and we don't exist when death does. Epicurus gives us the courage to let go of our fear of death, which frees us to live more easily and happily in the here and now. So how do these ideas make your life better? We can find happiness and mental peace by knowing what our wants are, telling the difference between ones that are important and ones that aren't, and learning how to control them well. We free ourselves from unneeded worries and stresses by deciding not to care about societal standards or the fear of death, which makes room for real happiness and tranquility. Epicureanism teaches us that happiness doesn't come from having things or being important, but from being at peace with yourself and not having to deal with pain or trouble. This philosophy teaches us to enjoy the easy things in life, like company, thought, and not having to worry about what other people want or fear. It also teaches us how to not care about other people. The Epicurean way of life tells us to rethink our wants and values, to let go of societal standards and pointless fears, and to enjoy life's simple, long-lasting joys. Let's keep these ideas from Epicurus with us as we go on our trip. Allow pleasure and desire to play a part in our lives, and let's learn to disregard things that don't include our long-term happiness. Thank you for joining us as we continue our philosophical look into how to not care. Next, we go to Denmark in the 1800s and meet Søren Kierkegaard, who is known as the founder of existentialism. Unlike the other philosophers we've talked about so far, Kierkegaard lived in a very different time and culture. The person, their emotions, freedom, choice, and subjective life are the main topics of Kierkegaard's philosophical philosophy. He thought that truth is relative and that each person had to figure out how to live their own life on their own. His works give us a deep look into the mind of a person by exploring anxiety, hopelessness, and the search for meaning. The jump of faith in the face of life's riddles and unknowns is one of Kierkegaard's most well-known ideas. Kierkegaard said that people who want to find meaning and get over their sadness should take a leap of faith and become religious. The idea behind the leap of faith is not limited to religion, even though it is often used in religious contexts, especially in Kierkegaard's works. This is about being okay with not knowing what will happen and having the courage to make choices without knowing for sure. Uncertainty is the root of a lot of our daily stress and anxiety. We worry about what might happen in the future and find it hard to make choices when we can't see what will happen. What if, though, we decide not to care about this chance? What if we take that leap of faith, know that we don't know what will happen, and make our decisions with courage and conviction? Kierkegaard said, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." This quote fits with what we're talking about because it reminds us that we can learn from our mistakes and gain knowledge from them, but we can't know or control what will happen in the future. So, deciding not to worry about what might happen in the future doesn't mean you're careless or don't care what happens. Instead, it's about getting rid of our crippling fear of the unknown so that we can fully live in the moment and do what we believe is right. By freeing us from the weight of fear and anxiety, adopting Kierkegaard's leap of faith could lead us to greater happiness. When we stop worrying too much about what might happen, we can focus on the here and now and do things that are in line with our values. We free ourselves to live an honest life without being constantly worried about what might happen in the future when we do this. Kierkegaard's psychological philosophy makes us think deeply about our own lives, our worries, and our freedom. He thinks that the leap of faith is a way to deal with the unknowns in life, not by trying to guess or control the future, but by facing these unknowns with courage and focusing on who we really are. Let's face the unknowns of life with courage, caring less about the things we can't control and more about living fully and honestly in the here and now. From the busy streets of Denmark in the 1800s, our intellectual journey takes us to ancient India, where Siddhartha Gautama, better known as the Buddha, created Buddhism, a deep philosophy and way to spiritual awakening. Buddhism is a non-theistic religion that has a special view on happiness, pain, detachment, and how to stop worrying about things that are temporary and will not last. In Buddhism, happiness is not the same thing as in many Western philosophies. Buddhism doesn't think of happiness as pleasure or getting what you want. Instead, it sees real happiness as a deep, long-lasting state of well-being and joy that comes from inner peace and knowledge. Because it has nothing to do with outside events, this happiness is available to everyone who practices mindfulness, acts in an ethical way, and understands how reality works. The Four Noble Truths are very important to Buddhism. They explain what pain is, why it happens, how to stop it, and the way to do that. According to what the Buddha taught, pain comes from tanha, which means a strong desire for something other or more than what is. We want things because we don't know the real nature of reality, which is changeable, unhappy, and not self-existent. This brings us to the Buddhist ideas of non-attachment and detachment, which are very important for learning how to not care. Detachment, from a Buddhist point of view, does not imply apathy or avoiding life's events. Instead, it's a deep knowledge and acceptance of the fact that everything changes. It's about not being attached to people, things, events, or even ideas, because you know they can change and let you down. As with detachment, non-attachment goes hand in hand with it. Being free from the need to hold on to things, events, or thoughts is what it means to be free. We can fully experience life as it happens when we practice non-attachment. We can feel joy, sadness, happiness, and pain without being controlled by these fleeting emotions. We learn to really care about life without being tied down by it. We are not rejecting or devaluing things that will not last if we don't care about them. We are instead learning how to deal with them in a better way, by fully feeling them and enjoying them while they last, and not being upset when they change or go away. When you apply this point of view to your life, you can find deep peace and happiness inside. It helps us enjoy the beauty of life's seasons without getting caught up in the storms of desire, dislike, or fantasy. It's said that you only lose what you cling to. This simple but deep saying sums up the core of Buddhist detachment and non-attachment. It tells us to let go and stop worrying too much about things that are temporary and hard to understand. By doing this, we remove ourselves from a lot of the pain we cause ourselves and make room for a deeper, longer-lasting kind of happiness. Buddhist teachings can help you learn how to not care because they give you deep insights into reality and the mind. We can learn to live a more peaceful, clear, and free life by learning and applying the ideas of detachment and non-attachment. Let us keep the Buddha's teachings in mind as we continue our journey. Allow us to remember that everything is open to change and that we can find inner peace and lasting happiness by not holding to things that are temporary. In the end, isn't that what we all want? We are now back in Europe, this time in Germany in the late 1800s, where we meet Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most important and controversial philosophers of all time. Friedrich Nietzsche gave us a strong way to look at the art of not caring. He was famous for his attacks on standard morals and his philosophy of life affirmation. Nietzsche's philosophy is based on the idea of life reinforcement, which he thought was the best thing about being human. Nietzsche said that to support life is to accept it as it is, with all of its problems, doubts, and conflicts. As long as you say yes to life with joy, wonder, and imagination, not in a dormant or defeated way, it's alive. There are a lot of similarities between Nietzsche's ideas about societal rules and the art of not caring and this philosophy of life reinforcement. According to Nietzsche, traditional morals and societal rules frequently prevent people from living fully and truly. He didn't like the idea of group morals, which says that good and bad are the same for everyone. That's not what Nietzsche meant by not caring about societal norms and traditional morality. It's not the same thing. Instead, it's about self-overcoming, which is the process by which people go beyond their learned habits and beliefs to build their own ideals. We can start to question, criticize, and finally get rid of societal standards when we stop thinking about them. This lets us write our own moral code and decide for ourselves what is important, useful, and satisfying. This is where the idea of the Übermensch, which is also known as the Overman or Superman, comes up. This idea is Nietzsche's idea of the perfect person, someone who has gotten over themselves, found their values, and accepted life in all its complexity. The Übermensch is the idea that you don't have to care about traditional morality. Instead, you should enjoy life with all of its chaos and confusion and make your own morals. In the book, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, I teach you the overman. Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? These strong words tell you what to do. They make us think and push us to make things. They tell us that we can get through hard times and become the people we really are. In our quest to learn how to not care, what does Nietzsche's philosophy have to offer? It makes us think about how we relate to societal rules and conventional morals. It gives us the courage to define our own beliefs and accept life as it is, rather than letting these outside standards limit our individuality. Let's keep Nietzsche's strong ideas in mind as we continue our research. Let's work on getting over ourselves, be brave enough to make our own standards, and learn to accept life as it is. Being on our intellectual trip, we are now in the 20th century, a time when people were still dealing with the effects of 2 world wars and where existentialism began. This philosophy movement, which stresses individuality, freedom, and personal responsibility, gives us a new way to think about how to live a happy, full life. Existentialism, which has its origins in the writings of Søren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche, gained popularity when philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus rejected conventional philosophical categories. Existentialism is a way of thinking about the individual, the real person, as it deals with things like anxiety, freedom, sincerity, and the absurd. Existentialism is based on the idea that each person's life is the most important thing in the world. That famous quote by Sartre, "Existence precedes essence," means that we exist first, and our actions, decisions, and events make us who we are. Being able to make our own lives is both freeing and scary. It makes us the masters of our own lives and gives us full control over what happens in them. Albert Camus' writings on the nonsense of life give existentialists a view on how important it is for each person to be free. Life has no meaning, goal, or order by nature. It is absurd. This understanding can make us feel hopeless or free. We can stop looking for meaning or approval from outside sources when we stop thinking about how silly things are and accept them as they are. We can instead focus on making our own meaning and paving our own way through the absurd. One of Camus' best works on this topic is Myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus, who is stuck rolling a rock up a hill over and over again, represents the human state in the face of the absurd. But, as Camus says, we should picture Sisyphus as happy. Because Sisyphus doesn't care that his work is pointless, he can find joy and meaning in the process itself, in his fight and determination. We want to know what existentialist philosophers like Sartre and Camus can teach us. We are free to choose, act, and make our own character, as they tell us. They teach us that life is silly, and that if we don't care about how silly it is, we can stop looking for approval from other people and make our own meaning. In the face of the absurd, they tell us to enjoy our freedom, take charge of our lives, and make our own way. Thanks a lot. From Stoicism to Buddhism, Nietzsche to Sartre and Camus, and all the way through the rich weave of philosophy, we've learned a lot about the art of not caring. Let's put this academic knowledge to use in the real world. In our daily lives, how can we apply these intellectual lessons? In the real world, what steps can we take? The first thing we need to do is figure out what we really care about. Think about the Stoic concept of the 2 kinds of control. Sort the things in your life that you can control from the things that you can't. The key is to focus on the things we can control, such as our thoughts, emotions, and deeds, and learn to let go of the things we can't. Taking this simple step can greatly lower worry and anxiety that aren't needed, making room for more happiness, freedom, and satisfaction. This brings us to our second point, being open to doubt. Like Kierkegaard showed us, life is full of unknowns, and trying to control or guess everything is not only pointless, it can also make you unhappy. By taking that leap of faith and being open to not knowing, we can get rid of the fear and anxiety that come with the unknown. It becomes clear to us that doubt is a chance for growth and change. In the third step, you have to face societal standards. As Epicurus, Nietzsche, and philosophy taught us, societal rules and standards can often stand in the way of our happiness and identity. Think about the stresses in your own life. Do they match your values and goals, or do they make you feel like you can't be yourself? Not thinking about these societal standards doesn't mean you're ignoring your duties or turning cold. Instead, it's about getting back your freedom to choose your own path, set your own ideals, and make your own character. The fourth step tells us to accept that life is silly. Based on Camus's wise words, we can recognize and accept the nonsense that is there. Instead of looking for meaning or approval from other people, focus on making your own meaning. This could happen through your hobbies, your job, your relationships, or your own growth. Find happiness in the process, in your Sisyphean battle. Although these steps can serve as a guide for us on our trip, they are not without difficulty to apply. It takes patience, courage, and self-compassion to go on this journey for a lifetime. There may be times when you feel doubt, fear, or confusion. Do not forget that it is okay to feel these emotions. They are normal for people. Recognize them, learn from them, and let them guide you instead of fighting against them. Some of you may be wondering how you can use these ideas right now. In this process, mindfulness can be a great help. To be mindful, you have to be fully present and pay attention to the present moment without judging it. It enables us to watch our ideas, emotions, and experiences without becoming engrossed in them. As an easy way to practice mindfulness, sit in silence for a few minutes every day and focus on your breath. Feel the air coming in and going out of your body. Bring your mind back to your breath slowly if it wanders. Being present, accepting things as they are, and not attaching to them are all important skills for learning how to not care. Remember that not caring isn't the same as being indifferent or neglectful. It's about figuring out what really matters, about accepting life with all of its unknowns and silly things, about finding your own soul amidst societal standards, unknowns, and the silly things that happen in life. Now that this look at the art of not caring is over, let's take a moment to think and maybe set the stage for what comes next. From the Stoic philosophers of ancient Rome to the existentialists of the 20th century, we've been on an interesting trip through time to look at how these philosophical schools have thought about the idea of not caring. We've looked at the Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control and learned that the way to tranquility and happiness is to figure out what we can control and focus our attention and energy on that. We learned about Epicurean philosophy and how Epicurus taught about pleasure, desire, and the value of not thinking about societal standards. We put a lot of faith in Kierkegaard by accepting that life is full of unknowns and realizing that not caring about what might happen can make us happy. We learned a lot about Eastern philosophy and how the Buddhist ideas of detachment and non-attachment can help us let go of things that don't last, which can lead to peace and happiness inside. We were encouraged to question societal rules by Nietzsche, and his philosophy showed us that not caring about following these norms can help us get over ourselves. The existentialist philosophers, especially Sartre and Camus, emphasized the foolishness of life and pushed us to take responsibility for our own lives, saying that not thinking about this underlying nonsense can lead to personal freedom. How to apply these intellectual ideas in daily life was covered in the final part. It was talked about how to figure out what's important to us, how to deal with confusion, how to go against societal norms, and how to accept the ridiculousness of life. We also talked about some problems that might come up along the way and the easy mindfulness method that can help you develop present, acceptance, and non-attachment. However, this discovery is just the start of your trip. The skill of not caring is not a place you can get to, but a way of life that you can follow. It takes self-compassion, patience, and courage. As you continue to learn more, remember to apply these intellectual ideas to your own life, to figure out what's important to you, and to let go of things that aren't good for you. The most important things in life are the lessons we learn, the new ideas we have, and the people we meet. Don't care about what other people think. Try not caring about what other people think and see what changes, freedom, and happiness it brings you. Remember that the path to not caring isn't about becoming apathetic or careless. It's about being yourself, taking back your freedom, and making your own way. It's about finding your own soul in the midst of societal standards, uncertainty, and the fact that life is just plain silly.